Welcome to the NFL Saturday Podcast. This is Amp, and I'm here to catch you up on fantasy football for the week, and we'll have some fun along the way. Today, let's talk about Week 1 and the players you should or shouldn't be worried about, or to be excited about if you should or shouldn't be excited. However, first, we are going to get your fun fact of the day. So the last time the Cleveland Browns started 2-0 was in 1993, which they have a chance to do this year. They're 1-0 right now. And actually 47 of the 53 players on the active roster were not alive yet. And Bill Belichick was the head coach at the time. They ended up finishing 7-9, which I think is pretty interesting. The Browns also haven't started 1-0 since 2004, so they've already done that, which is pretty crazy. That's almost 20 years. Now let's talk about Week 1. First, I want to get into things not to be worried about. Obviously, I said this in the last episode, but don't overreact. I think the perfect example is Mike Williams, who obviously had a pretty bad Week 1, but in Week 2, he already went off on Thursday night, and I think there's going to be a lot more players that are like that. The first thing not to be worried about, I think anyone in the Niners and Bears game, that game was a mess. It was raining incredibly hard, so I wouldn't be worried about players like Cole Kmet, Trey Lance, Ayuk, Debo, Mooney, Fields. I wouldn't be worried about Fields. So I think anyone in that game, you can kind of give a free pass and see how they do this week. I don't think you should necessarily think they're going to do great, but there's a lot of hope still. I'll just say that. The next one was Allen Robinson. Obviously, I talked about this last week because they did play Thursday night. McVay says they want to get him involved. So essentially, I think that means he's going to get a lot more opportunities, especially this week. I think they're going to hyper-target him. So I am playing him in a lot of DFS. I think you should as well. Another person I wouldn't be too worried about is Breece Hall. He should be getting more involved as the season progresses. I don't think that will happen necessarily this week, but if you are holding on to him in your league, I would definitely hold on to him for a couple more weeks, see how he gets involved into the team. Maybe not start him, but I do think he will essentially evolve as the season goes on. The next person is Derrick Henry. He still looks like a beast. I just think it was a bad game script. They ended up losing, so can't really fault him there. Obviously, it probably should have been a free win. I mean, they were playing the Jags, I think. I think it was Jags or Houston. I don't remember exactly who it was, but I think it was the Jags. But they should have probably won that game if they were playing at their form. Derrick Henry still had the juice. I'm not worried about him going forward. I think it was just a bad week. Kadarius Toney is also someone I'm not worried about. He did look great in his 2 touches or however many he had. I think he only had 2. It just seemed like he was on a snap count. It seemed like he was still recovering from an injury. So maybe not play him this week. I think he's questionable. I'm not really sure. I haven't been keeping in touch with Kadarius Toney, but I would say just keep an eye out. I think he will improve as the season goes on as he recovers from that injury. Another one is Hollywood Brown. I think this is similar to Allen Robinson. He should be hyper-targeted in Week 2. I think they kind of realized that they should have been throwing to him more earlier on, and I think it's a good matchup against Las Vegas. So I'm definitely starting Hollywood Brown anywhere I have him. Another one is Alvin Kamara. Again, kind of similar to Derrick Henry. I think this was likely just a bad week, and he should bounce back. Obviously, I'm very hopeful because I do have shares of Alvin Kamara, but definitely I think just a bad week. Another player, DJ Moore. I think he always kind of has these bad games. He typically has these insane week-winning games where he'll just get like 40 points. So he's kind of more hit or miss, kind of similar to Amari Cooper, where he'll just hit or miss, and like 50% of his games will be good and 50% will be terrible or bad. I think DJ Moore definitely, though, you kind of just have to play him, and those games are going to come. You don't know when it's going to be. It could be a good matchup, bad matchup, so you kind of just have to stick it out when he does have the bad games. Another one is Kyle Pitts, and this is the last one I don't think you should be worried about. He should bounce back. You drafted him early, so obviously I think you have to stick it out and don't sell him on a low. That's the last thing. You definitely don't sell him on a low. He should bounce back. He should get those targets and catches. And, he's just Kyle Pitts. He's probably going to have bad games. All tight ends do. It was just a terrible week for tight ends in general. So definitely I would not sell him low or bench him or pick or drop him even. Definitely just stick it out for now until we see a couple more weeks of him doing bad. Then I would start to panic. Now, I think there are some things you should be worried about. The Patriots offense is one of them. They looked terrible. Miami just completely dominated them, and I don't think Miami is a top tier defense. I think they're solid, but I don't think they're top tier anymore. They still just look dominant, and I think that was more because of the Patriots offense looking terrible. Another one is the Chiefs receivers. In fantasy specifically, I would not play any of the Chiefs receivers. There wasn't a clear target. It seemed to be more the running backs getting the extra targets from Tyreek Hill leaving. So honestly, there's a chance I might drop all the receivers. I think you should stick it out if you drafted Juju or Sky Moore, at least a week or two until you cut them, but they really don't look good. And you probably could trade them if you have someone that is interested in those Chiefs receivers. Maybe the Patrick Mahomes owner wants to get a stack. I do think, though, that you want to stay clear from those Chiefs receivers. Najee Harris also did not look great. It did seem like the quality of carries was my biggest concern. The targets will not be high-quality targets. And I'm hoping that Kenny Pickett possibly could revive this offense. But it does seem like Mike Tomlin more wants to just get those wins, He doesn't want to risk putting in a rookie quarterback. So I'm really worried about Najee Harris. And I personally was not drafting him anyway. But if you are drafting him, I would be worried. You kind of do have to just start him for now until you see a couple more weeks. But I'm definitely worried about Najee Harris. Another one is Dameon Pierce, which this one hurts because he was one of my breakout players. I thought he would have a great start. But Rex Burkhead was a lot more involved than I thought he was. I think Dameon Pierce, I'm hoping as the season moves on, he gets more touches. So I'm holding on to that hope. But for now, I'm not starting him if I can. Hopefully you can not start him because you should have gotten him in a place where you didn't have to start him. But this, again, is one of those risks where if you do draft those rookie players, you don't necessarily know how they're going to start. A lot of them do pick up as the season goes on. So hopefully that does happen with Dameon Pierce, but definitely a concern. The next player, Devontae Smith, you already saw a ton of volume for A.J. Brown, and it doesn't seem like they're going to be throwing a ton. Obviously, this is kind of expected. Jalen Hurts is more of a scrambler and then throw when he gets a good look, and it seems like A.J. Brown is getting all those looks. It seems like they're going to be running the ball a ton, which it seemed like it worked well. They really looked like they were clicking on offense, and it did not seem like Devontae Smith was part of that. He was having some injury concerns in the preseason and in training camp, so I wouldn't necessarily cut him, but I am worried, and I think he probably won't be getting a ton of volume because there isn't a huge pie anyway, and it seems like A.J. Brown is getting most of that pie. So definitely very concerned about Devontae Smith. I think if you can trade him, do it. I don't know if there is anybody who's willing to trade for him, but for now, yeah, definitely not starting him, possibly cutting him if you have anyone on the waiver wire that is exciting, I don't think there's any real hope right now of Devontae Smith. And don't get me wrong, I think he's a great player. I think all these players are great players. It just is kind of a fantasy thing. They're not really clicking for fantasy, so that's why I'm kind of concerned about them. The next one is Cowboys offense. They obviously lost Dak, but they were looking bad with Dak. So I think they're going to be even worse without Dak. And I think Zeke is the only bright spot, really. It did seem like he was getting pretty high yards per carry. I don't have any faith in their offense. Zeke possibly going to be fine. There's a chance you got him pretty late as your third or flex spot. I don't know. I would probably keep starting him for now, unless you have someone that does have a better opportunity, but it's likely that you'll have to play Zeke, but I would be benching almost all my other Cowboys, possibly Dalton Schultz you would play, but I just have no confidence in anyone on the Cowboys offense right now, and I don't think they're going to have Dak back for at least 8 weeks. I think they said 6-week timeline is just ridiculous. I don't see that happening. If they do bring him back, he probably won't be fully healthy, so I'm staying away from all Cowboys if I can. The next one that I'm worried about is the Packers receivers. Besides Lazard, Allen Lazard obviously didn't play. I think he'll be great when he comes back, when he's healthy. But for now, I have no confidence in Watson. It seemed like he was dropping some key passes. There's a chance, obviously, as the season goes on, he could break out near the end of the year like a lot of rookies do. But I'm not holding on that. I would rather pick up a player that has a chance of being a star now and seeing how they do rather than wait 6 to 7 weeks for him to start doing something. And I didn't see any flashes or sparks that I liked. And Dobbs was also the same thing. Romeo Dobbs, he wasn't relied on. And I thought after Lazard was out that he probably would get more targets. It does seem like he is that rookie wide receiver where it's going to possibly break out later on in the year. Same with Watson. And I just don't want to hold on to that right now. It's not worth the risk. So besides Lazard, I think most of the other receivers will be ignored, and I'm not touching them. Now it's time for Ask Anissa, where I ask my wife a question about football, and she knows nothing about football. So this will probably be some fun. So, Anissa, what team do you think will bounce back and win in week 2? The Lions, the Cardinals, or the Patriots?
The Cardinals.
You think the Cardinals? Yeah. All right. Lock it in. Everyone place your bets. And yeah. Now let's get back into week 1. I'm going to talk about things not to be too excited about. Basically players who did well, but I wouldn't overhype them. You can still be excited, still be happy, but I wouldn't go out and trade everything for these players. And the first one is Javonte Williams. He still looked really good, don't get me wrong, I think he's great, but it does seem like he's getting more of the passing down work and less of the rushing, which is still going to Melvin Gordon. And it seems like he is still going to be very involved. I would try to stay away from trading for Javonte Williams. If you have Javonte Williams, he's still going to be good. I just don't think he's going to have that league-winning upside that a lot of people hoped he would have. If Gordon gets hurt, obviously this completely changes. Javonte Williams could be a top 5 back, but right now I think he's going to be more in that bottom RB1, RB2 range, and that's not really the upside that you were drafting him for. You were drafting him to have that high ceiling. So I think he's still a good play. I think he's still valuable on your team. I just don't think he has that league-winning upside, and it's not something you should probably expect from him at this point. The next person I wouldn't get too excited about is Donovan Peoples-Jones. I will say he looks good, and I've had him in past. I had him in a dynasty league, so I'm hoping he does really well, but I'm just not getting my hopes too high right now because it does seem like Cooper had a bad week. Amari Cooper always has these games. It seems like half of the year he has bad games and half the year he does well. And I think Amari Cooper is going to start taking targets away from Donovan Peoples-Jones at some point. I think it's going to be much more hit or miss for Donovan Peoples-Jones. I don't think he will have consistency in fantasy. I think you could pick him as a spot start, but I wouldn't get too excited for him yet. Obviously, this is probably more of a dynasty thing. If you are trading for him long term, I wouldn't necessarily do that yet, but I think he does have the potential to be a spot start and have some solid weeks. Just don't get too excited. That's all I'm saying. The next person, I guess not even a person, I don't know why I said person, but the team I wouldn't be too excited about is the Seahawks. Do not trust the Seahawks. I think that was just them kind of knowing Russell Wilson, them really wanting that revenge, and I think they got kind of lucky. It seemed like Russell Wilson was pretty nervous. They, even in a game where they won, it did not seem like they played better than the Broncos. Specifically, I mean, the Broncos had a lot of sloppy plays near the goal line, 2 turnovers in the red zone, and they still barely won. Barely won. So I think that the Seahawks kind of just got lucky. I don't want to say they just got lucky because they still won the game. It just didn't seem like they could move the ball well on offense, and their defense seemed like they were still getting torn up by Russell Wilson. So I am kind of just staying away. Their fantasy upside was very limited. Lockett and Metcalf in a game they won did pretty bad. So I'm kind of staying away from anyone besides maybe Will Dissly. That's possibly the only one I'm starting. Even Rashad Penny didn't look great. So I'm holding off on essentially everyone on the Seahawks. The next person I wouldn't get too excited about is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think he is a great player. It just seems like the running back is way more of a committee than we thought it would be. He does seem like he will have good weeks, but I don't think he'll be great every week. It seems much more touchdown reliant or big play reliant. On Thursday, he had that huge play at the end of the game. I think it was 53 yards, and that seemed like the only reason he did well. He had 15 points in my league. Obviously, if you're not playing in PPR, it's a little less, but that seems like more of what you can expect from him, and possibly getting less, possibly getting more based on his big play upside or touchdown upside. It just doesn't seem like he'll be consistent, which is kind of what you're looking for in a running back. So I'm still a little excited for him, but more just expecting him to be the bottom RB2 range, not expecting him to be high RB1 upside or anything like that. The next player is Julio Jones. I wouldn't get too excited. He only had 10 points, so not even something to be super excited about. He did get shaken up on a deep ball, but as these other Tampa Bay receivers are not being able to play, I wouldn't get too excited about his opportunities. It does seem like he's still going to be a solid desperation play for your fantasy team, but it doesn't seem like he's going to be that high upside that he might have had. And by high upside, I mean or wide receiver 2 upside. I think he did have that potential, but it doesn't seem like he even has that right now. It seems like he's more going to be the big play threat, and if he gets a big touchdown, he might end up with 20 fantasy points, but I don't see him getting more than that. It seems like he's probably going to be more on that 10 fantasy point range. He might get one big play a game, but I'm not expecting that much from him. Now, things to be excited about. I wanted to end it on a high note, so let's go over the players I'm very excited about. First is Davante Adams, who is clearly Derek Carr's go-to target. We already knew that he was great friends with Derek Carr in college. It seems like he's gone right back to that chemistry, right back to the hyper target, and I'm just so excited. We already knew Davante Adams is a beast, but he's really seemingly going back to that top 5 wide receiver upside, and it seems like he's there already. Another one is Michael Pittman Jr., who is clearly Matt Ryan's favorite target. He is going to be out week 2, but once he becomes healthy, he should bounce back and be a top 10 wide receiver. That's what I think, at least. He may be wide receiver 2, but I think he's going to be in that wide receiver 1 range. Another one is Treylon Burks. It seems like he's much more involved than I expected, at least, and he should be getting an increased target share as the season goes on. However, obviously he's a rookie. Could just be a good game, but he was there to replace A.J. Brown, and he should be a solid target share. So I think Treylon Burks could be a start going forward even. And as the season goes on, he definitely should be a start. Now, as I just mentioned, A.J. Brown looks solid. He looks like a wide receiver 1. He looks like Diggs when he moved to Buffalo. I think the pie, obviously, and the volume is smaller. The pie is smaller in Philadelphia than it is in Buffalo. But he should be super targeted all year, and he should be great. I'm very excited for A.J. Brown if you have him. Another one is Jahan Dotson. He seems very involved. We obviously heard in preseason that he was going to be a starter, so I drafted him as a sleeper in a couple leagues, and I'm very excited. He probably won't be good every week, but he should have that spot start upside when you need him, which is exactly what you're looking for when you're drafting him in the 13th round or whenever he was going. So I am very excited for him. He seems very involved, and Washington overall seems a lot better than I expected. I don't think many people expected Carson Wentz to come out and throw like that. So there probably will be games where Carson Wentz plays terrible and Jahan Dotson is non-existent, but he does have that upside, and is, as you saw, a touchdown upside, 2 touchdowns. So he could have a great week if you need a starter. Next one is Saquon Barkley, who looks completely back in form. He looks like a top 5 running back right now, and I'm very excited if you have him. I don't really have him in any leagues, and I'm very bummed because he looks great. Now, the next one is Darrell Henderson Jr. He seems like the lead back, and he should be a solid RB2. I don't think he will have that incredibly high upside that like Todd Gurley had, but I think he will be a solid weekly starter. And he really, if you have a RB1 that's doing great, Darrell Henderson is just a solid play to add that stability to your lineup. So I really like Darrell Henderson. Now, Amon-Ra St. Brown is someone I really want to talk about because he looks so good, and ever since he had the breakout at the end of last year, he has been on an insane pace. He is just scoring and getting all these catches from the Lions, and the Lions just look so good right now, which is weird to say. They look really good on offense. It seems like he has been so consistent since the end of last year that Amon-Ra St. Brown is someone I am 100% starting every week until he does bad, and then I would probably still start him during good matchups. I think he is just doing great right now. And until we have Jameson Williams coming back, I don't see Amon-Ra St. Brown having really any bad games. But even when he comes back, I still think he'll be involved. So I'm very, very excited about Amon-Ra St. Brown if you have him. Now, the last 2 players I'm excited about are Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry. And I guess you can include Jameson Williams as well in this. But Thomas was supposed to be on a snap count week 1, and he still got 2 TDs. He still looked involved, and he looks back. He looks very good right now, and I'm excited if you do have him. I am playing him right now, and yeah, if you do have him, I would definitely play him. Jarvis Landry is also someone that I'm playing if you are in a PPR. He looks like a PPR machine. He looks like he's going to get targeted on a lot of catches, and yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think he's going to be a go-to receiver, especially when you do have those good cornerback matchups against Michael Thomas, who I still think will be involved, especially in the red zone. But I think Jarvis Landry just has that safe floor. And I don't know if he has the huge upside, but he never really has. He's always just been a solid wide receiver 2 to have because he adds that stability, much like Darrell Henderson. So I'm loving those 2 players. And now it is time for the strong opinion of the day. That is all for this episode. So let's end it on this. I think it is better to end your career on top than to drag it out into mediocrity. Because sometimes you just know when it's time to end things. Just like this.